Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So, before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. On our way back from a long trip, we just wanted to get home. But a stop in the middle of a rainy night made everything take an unexpected turn. That was the night I learned that not everyone who knocks on your car window needs help. My girlfriend and I had recently taken a long road trip to California. The trip there was completely normal. However, on the way back home, we started in the middle of the day, and most of the drive was at night. We were tired after the trip and just wanted to get back to our cozy home as soon as possible. The trip took about 10 hours each way, not including stops for food. We stopped to eat twice, the first time after about 3 hours of driving, and then again late at night. We got off the highway around 12:30 a.m. and went to the nearest Wendy's to eat. The late-night atmosphere was quiet, with only the sound of the car engine and the dim neon lights from the stores that were still open. We got back on the highway. I was driving and eating my chicken nuggets. My girlfriend hadn't finished her Baconator, but she wasn't in the mood because I kept rushing her. I knew she was annoyed, but I just wanted to get home sooner. Not long after we got back on the highway, it started to rain. My girlfriend made me pull over. She didn't want me to eat and drive in bad weather. I was a little annoyed at being told to stop. A feeling of frustration and exhaustion washed over me, but I also understood that she was just worried about our safety. When we pulled over, it started to pour. I had just finished eating, and then we heard a thump on the window. The sudden sound startled us. At first, I thought it was just the noise from the rain. But when I looked out the window, I saw a figure. I didn't want to roll down the window because the rain was so heavy, but through the loud sound of the rain hitting the car, I couldn't hear what the person outside was saying. I only opened the window a small crack and asked the person what they needed. It turned out to be a woman. She was soaked and looked terrified. The sight of her made me feel both pity and unease. She asked for a ride. I couldn't refuse in that condition, so I told her to get in the back seat. My girlfriend looked at me with a look of confusion as if asking, "Why did you let her in?" And I could feel her anxiety from the way she squeezed her hands together. I asked the woman where she was going, but she didn't answer. Her strange silence made the atmosphere in the car feel suffocating. My girlfriend glanced at the woman and then at me with a worried look. I looked at the woman in the back seat through the rearview mirror. I thought she didn't hear me. I repeated my question, and she was still silent. The tension in the car grew thicker. I said loudly that I would let the woman out in the next town we passed. Still, there was silence. This time, it seemed like she was ignoring us. My girlfriend gave her a look of annoyance. About 20 minutes later, the rain had stopped, and we were able to move. We got back on the empty highway. Suddenly, a piercing scream came from the back of the car, and the woman in the back seat suddenly put her arms around my neck and choked me. Everything happened too fast to think. I couldn't breathe. The car swerved, and I quickly slammed on the brakes, almost sliding into the median. My girlfriend screamed at the woman to stop and started scratching her face. The woman's screams became more and more frantic. As soon as I got free from the woman, I quickly got out of the car, my breathing uneven from the shock I had just experienced. I went to the passenger side door, helped my girlfriend out, and then opened the back door and pulled the woman out of the car. She started to beg, "Please, please." That was all she had said since we met her. Her voice and appearance were pitiful, but I didn't feel safe at all when I looked into her eyes. It wasn't the look of a normal person asking for help, but something empty and terrifying. I ignored her, and we got back in the car. As I put the car in gear, there were thumps on the window. Her screaming was like a crazy mental patient. That sound haunted me for many nights afterward. I locked the doors and drove away quickly. My girlfriend immediately called the police and warned them about a strange woman wandering on the highway. Her voice was shaking, and she was probably still in shock after what happened. We didn't stop again and drove straight home. We both knew we had just escaped something terrible. The remaining miles home passed in heavy silence. Each of us was lost in our own thoughts about what had just happened and grateful to still be alive. Months have passed since the incident, and I still can't forget the look in that woman's eyes every time I drive on a lonely road at night. The feeling of unease still haunts me, making me always check the car doors and be more cautious of strangers asking for a ride. We just wanted to get away from the suffocating atmosphere of the base for the weekend. None of us thought that a simple road trip would lead us to face something unexpected. At the time, I was 24, a recent college graduate, and had been stationed at Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas, as a communications specialist. Life on the base was pretty boring, just work and long nights in the barracks. That is until I met two friends. Reese was a radar technician, and Jalen was an officer. We decided to drive to Austin to escape the stuffy atmosphere of the base. Jalen offered to use her car. We left in the morning, and the road stretched out straight through the dry fields. There weren't many cars on the road. Only a semi-truck would pass by now and then. About an hour into our drive, Reese looked behind us. She pointed to a black Tahoe that was driving behind us. It's been following us for a while now. I didn't think much of it until Reese kept watching. When Jalen sped up, the Tahoe also sped up. When we slowed down, it also slowed down, always keeping the same distance. Jalen tried changing lanes, and the car also changed lanes. The Tahoe had black tinted windows, so we couldn't see who was inside. Looking closer, I saw a small black light bar on top of the car, but I wasn't sure. We kept driving for a while. Then the Tahoe turned on its warning lights and pulled us over. So my guess about the lights was right. "Undercover cops?" Jalen mumbled, and slowly pulled over to the side of the road. The Tahoe stopped right behind us, with its lights still flashing, but there was no siren sound. A tall man got out of the Tahoe, wearing a police uniform. I watched him every second. When he got close enough, I realized that he didn't have the word "police" clearly on his chest or hat, just a small patch on his sleeve that I couldn't read. Instead of going straight to the driver's window, he slowly walked to the back of our car, where he stood for a few seconds, looking through the rear window. Reese rolled down her window and asked what was wrong, but the man didn't answer. He slowly approached the driver's door, his face emotionless as he looked at each person in the car. "Driver's license and registration." Jalen reached for her license in her purse and asked, "What did we do wrong?" But there was no answer. Still, she reluctantly handed over the documents. The man went back to the Tahoe and sat in it for a long time. About 15 minutes passed as we sat in silence, watching him through the rearview mirror. Finally, the Tahoe door opened again, but this time, it wasn't just one man. 3 men got out. They were all wearing the same uniform, but I still couldn't see any official markings. When they got closer, I could clearly see their harsh faces and cold eyes. The one in the lead had a small scar running from the corner of his eye down his cheek. "Is your father a service member?" The question was completely unexpected. He pointed to the U.S. military sticker on the back window of Jalen's car. "No, sir. I am a service member." "They are too," Jalen replied with confidence. At that moment, I saw a change on the man's face. His body seemed to freeze. His eyes quickly glanced at the 2 men standing behind him. A few seconds of tense silence passed. Then he turned back to Jalen. His face was suddenly more relaxed, but his voice was awkward. "Okay, all right. I'll let you off with a warning this time, but you should drive slower on this road." He gave her the documents back and wished us a good day. The 3 men went back to the Tahoe, got in, and sped away while telling us to drive slowly. We stayed in our car and didn't drive away yet. Reese argued that they were not real police officers, citing her reasons. No clear badge, and why would he ask about Jalen's father when it had nothing to do with a traffic violation? Jalen also wondered why there were 3 men when police usually only go in groups of 1 or 2. We decided to turn back to the base instead of continuing to Austin. The whole way back, Reese kept saying that those men were definitely up to no good. A week later, we were watching the local news. On the screen, a reporter was standing next to a ditch by the highway, only about 20 miles from where we were stopped. 2 bodies had been found there, a middle-aged couple. The reporter announced that the victims had been robbed and murdered. The car found near the scene was a black Tahoe, which had been reported stolen 3 months earlier in Arkansas. We were stunned after hearing the news. We immediately called the police to provide information about our encounter a week earlier. They took our statements and said they would investigate, but I knew it was too late. Those men had disappeared without a trace. To this day, I still wonder what would have happened if we didn't have that military sticker on the car. I'm certain that it saved our lives that day. About 10 years ago, I was driving alone from New Jersey to Texas to visit my parents. On the way, on a deserted stretch of road, my car started acting up. I kept mumbling a prayer to my car. This was not the time or place to have car trouble. I pulled the car over, opened the hood, and looked at the engine. The car definitely had a problem, but I didn't know anything about engines to figure out what was wrong. I was panicking and didn't know what to do. I didn't have an AA membership, and my friends were thousands of miles away. I felt completely alone and unsafe, like I was in the middle of a never-ending void. There was nothing around but cornfields and a long, empty road. The wind blew through the corn stalks, making a rustling sound that made me feel even more isolated. A few minutes later, a white pickup truck with no front license plate slowed down and stopped right behind my car. A man in his 40s, with a rugged look, messy curly hair, and an uneven long beard, got out. He didn't greet me or ask what was wrong. He just introduced himself as a mechanic and bent down to look at my car's engine. I felt uncomfortable with the way he was looking at me, but I thought to myself that I might be too suspicious. After messing around for a while, he said he needed a compression test kit and that his friend, who was also a mechanic, could bring it. He complained that his phone was dead and asked to borrow mine. At this point, I started to hesitate, but I quickly thought that if I didn't accept his help, there was no other way. As soon as I handed him my phone, he pulled a gun from his jacket, pointed it at me, and ordered, "Sit down on the side of the road and don't do anything stupid." I stared at the gun, frozen. My hands and feet were shaking and my mind was blank. I did what he said and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to burst. He went through my pockets, took my wallet, my laptop, and made me tell him my phone password. Done. He got into his truck and drove away, leaving me on the side of the road with a cold emptiness and a feeling of complete helplessness. I stood there shaking and angry. I gritted my teeth and swore I would find him. Luckily, a little later, another man in a pickup truck drove by and helped me start my car. The man kept asking me if I was okay, but I just nodded robotically, my mind still in a daze. And to be honest, I didn't trust anyone anymore, even though he had just helped me. I continued my journey to my parents' house. The next few weeks were a continuous cycle of canceling cards, getting new documents, changing passwords, and trying to recover what I had lost. Every time I got a call from a bank or checked my email, I was terrified that something else bad would happen. About 2 months later, I received a letter from a strange bank thanking me for opening a new line of credit. I stared at the letter. Then came a letter from Best Buy with a credit card in my name and over $1,000 in transactions in a strange town in Tennessee. At that moment, I remembered that my Social Security card was in my wallet when it was stolen. Now he had enough information to become me. I threw the letter onto the table and ran my hands through my hair. The feeling of helplessness and anger welled up. The nightmare wasn't over. My life quickly fell into chaos. A series of debts, new credit cards, and bad credit reports appeared. I filed a report with the FTC, put a fraud alert on my credit, and froze my credit. The police weren't much help because I didn't have the bastard's name or license plate number. The road where the robbery happened also didn't have any surveillance cameras. Every phone call, every time I had to explain the story, exhausted me more. I also called the police departments in the towns where the fraudulent transactions happened, but everything was still at a dead end. It felt like I was fighting a ghost. The breaking point was when my health insurance company called, saying that someone had been admitted to the emergency room in Georgia under my name, creating a fake medical record. At this point, I couldn't take it anymore. My blood was boiling with rage. I spent all my free time trying to track him down. The image of his rugged face kept appearing in my mind, urging me not to give up. One night, I checked Craigslist in the areas where the fraudulent transactions happened. My eyes were tired from staring at the screen for hours. In Tennessee, I saw a post selling electronics and miscellaneous items, all of which matched the items that were charged to the Best Buy card in my name. I finally had a lead. I contacted him to buy the items, of course, through text messages. A few days later, he asked to meet in a public place and requested cash. I considered driving there myself, but I was afraid I would lose control, so I called the police department there. The details I gave them made them agree to work with me. I also talked him into revealing that he drove a red pickup truck. That day, the police set up an ambush. I was not at the scene, but waited for the results at the police station. As soon as he saw the patrol car, he sped away, lost control, and drove into a ditch. He was arrested very quickly. The crash wasn't very serious. Even more surprising from his confession, the police tracked down a professional criminal group. They specialized in targeting tourists and solo drivers on interstate highways. In the end, they were all arrested, charged, and went to prison. When I heard the news, I felt both relieved and bitter. The losses and the fear were still there, but at least this time, justice was on my side. I collapsed into a chair, and the last tears rolled down my cheeks. I no longer drive at night, no matter how long or short the distance is. If I have to, I'll ask someone to go with me. And even though I don't drive at night, I signed up for an AAA membership. You never know what kind of unwanted situations you might get into. So, be careful and be prepared so you can handle everything as smoothly as possible. That's the expensive lesson I learned. My name is Lily, and the story I'm about to tell took place when I was 10 years old. My family moved to a remote countryside area in Montana when my father got a new job. Our house was quite small, made of wood, nestled between rolling hills and endless stretches of pine forests. The landscape here was very peaceful, to the point where sometimes I felt completely isolated from the world. My father was a carpenter. He often spent hours in his workshop, making tables and chairs that he was very proud of. My mother stayed at home as a housewife and took care of the family. There weren't many neighbors around our home and no one my age, so I spent most of my time either playing alone in the backyard or reading books in my room. I loved the sense of freedom here, but at times, the solitude made me feel uneasy. About half a mile from our house stood the old house of Mr. Howard, with peeling paint and a sagging porch. He was elderly and lived alone. People around here said he used to be a soldier, but ever since returning from the war, he lived in isolation, rarely interacting with anyone. Mr. Howard would often stand by the gate, staring at me when I came home from school, his deep-set eyes sending shivers down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was just his odd habit. Everyone in the village avoided him, and I wasn't an exception. One afternoon, as I was walking home from school, I had the feeling that someone was watching me from afar. I slowly turned around to check and was startled to see Mr. Howard standing on his porch, staring intently at me. I greeted him, keeping the proper respect for an elder, then walked away faster. When I looked back, thinking I'd gone far enough, I was shocked to see Mr. Howard still standing there, eyes never leaving me. A faint smile on his face made me want to run, but also made me curious. That evening, it was quite late, and I didn't want to sleep because I was engrossed in a new toy my father had given me that afternoon. Suddenly, I noticed the flashlight light flashing through my bedroom window. At first, I thought it was just a car's headlights or someone's flashlight, but my room was on the second floor, and the light always came from a specific spot outside the pine forest, repeating several times. I covered myself with the blanket, tightly closed my eyes, and hummed a familiar tune I often sang whenever I felt anxious, then eventually fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, I didn't tell my parents, maybe because I was used to dealing with things on my own after being alone for so long. One late afternoon, while playing in the backyard, I happened to see Mr. Howard standing near the forest behind our house, holding something shiny in the sunlight. He kept waving the object in his hand, muttering angry curses and scolding. I stared for a few seconds, then suddenly realized that it was a blade, the sunlight reflecting sharply on its metal surface. A sudden chill ran through me. I quickly ran into the house and locked the door. My heart pounded in my chest, but curiosity still lingered, so I peeked through the window to see if Mr. Howard had left. My mother noticed my strange behavior and asked if something had happened. I was about to tell her, but then I shook my head and smiled weakly. I was afraid she wouldn't believe me and would think I was imagining things. That evening, the light didn't just flash through the window, but lingered longer. I quickly pulled the blanket over my body, trying to control my breathing. My heart raced, and I couldn't bring myself to stand up and look. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I was about to call my parents when the light suddenly went out, and everything returned to the eerie silence. It took me a long time to fall asleep, my eyes heavy. The next morning, my father discovered strange footprints near the window while cleaning the backyard. The footprints were large, with mud clearly left from the forest. My mother mentioned that she had also heard footsteps the previous night. Immediately, I told my parents about the 2 times the light had flashed into my room through the window. I burst into tears, my 10-year-old strength having reached its limit. From that day on, I could feel the tension quietly spreading throughout the family, like a small flame smoldering. That night it rained heavily, and the wind howled through the cracks in the doors, with tree branches scraping against the window like eerie whispers. I tried to focus on my book to forget everything, but then a soft knock came from the window. I froze for a few seconds, then trembling, I went over and drew back the curtains, only to be stunned. Mr. Howard was standing on a ladder, his face so close that I could see every wrinkle. He knocked again, and with his other hand, pointed to the door. His lips moved as though he wanted to say something, but I couldn't hear anything. I screamed and ran straight to my parents' room, incoherently pointing toward the room, tears streaming down my face. My father grabbed the shotgun and rushed to my room, while my mother called the police. Even though my mother held me tightly, a coldness still enveloped my body. When the police arrived, they didn't find Mr. Howard, but they discovered a ladder and a flashlight left near the window. The footprints led deep into the forest and then disappeared, possibly erased by the heavy rain. The next morning, the police came to Mr. Howard's house. The front door was unlocked and the inside was messy, filled with old items. On the old sofa, Mr. Howard's body was found, still drenched from the rain. His face was covered by his disheveled hair, and his eyes were still wide open, staring at something tightly clutched in his hand. It was a photo of a little girl who looked very much like me, standing in the middle of a field of flowers, her eyes shining with happiness. The police continued their investigation and discovered that the girl in the photo was Mr. Howard's daughter. She had passed away many years ago in an accident on a stormy night when he was still serving in the military. Mr. Howard couldn't overcome the shock of losing his daughter. Perhaps when he saw me, he mistook me for his daughter. His many stares were actually him keeping watch, and the flashlight shining through the window was his way of trying to protect his little girl from some danger. In his journal, the police found a scrawled note: "Be careful. Don't let them take you." One evening, I ran into the backyard to retrieve a toy I had dropped. Suddenly, from the direction of the forest, I saw the faint light of a flashlight flash and then disappear quickly. My heart pounded in my chest, and I stood frozen, unable to take my eyes off the spot. A chilling, indescribable feeling of unease engulfed me. Since then, the flashlight beam has always been a haunting presence for me. Every time I see a flicker of light in the dark, I remember that moment, and the fear rushes back. Now, as an adult, I look back at everything and wonder, could the flashlight that shone into my room that night not have been Mr. Howard? Maybe he was just trying to protect me from some other danger. I'm just thankful that my family is still safe to this day. I'm David, and I'm about to turn 30. I'm single and living in Tucson. I'm an office worker in the finance field. I have an ideal work environment, friendly colleagues, a job I love, and I can develop myself a lot. A few months ago, a female employee joined my department. She's very beautiful, a perfect combination of European and Asian. I was impressed with this girl from the first meeting. Unlike other new hires, she wasn't introduced by the management on her first day at work. She came to my office and introduced herself. At that time, 2 colleagues in the same room were out, so I was the only one to welcome her. She is smart and learns quickly. However, after working at the company for a while, she still had no other friends besides me. I noticed that she was shy, often sitting alone looking sad and not communicating with those around her. Other colleagues in the company also ignored her. They passed by as if she didn't exist. Each time this happened, I would go over and encourage her. As we grew closer, the distance between me and my other colleagues widened. One close colleague called me into a private corner to talk. "You haven't been in a good mood lately, have you, David?" I was surprised to receive that question. I told him I was just fine. Get a grip and stay away from Rose immediately. Dante's firm tone in his voice startled me. I felt annoyed at how those people treated such a vulnerable girl. I ignored Dante's remarks and left. In fact, I felt happy when I was around her. Every time people saw us talking, some looked at us with disdain, while others expressed discomfort. After a while, I realized I had developed feelings for Rose. I knew she held me in high regard, but I wasn't sure if she had a particular situation. Thus, I had been in unrequited love with Rose for a long time. Due to the disapproving looks from others, Rose and I often met on the rooftop of the building during our lunch breaks. We would have lunch together and share stories with one another. One afternoon, I brought rice and sandwiches. I excitedly showed them to Rose and invited her to eat with me. Rose declined, saying she was on a diet and was only eating the salad she had prepared. I noticed that Rose ate very little, almost nothing at all. I thought that most women believed they needed to lose weight, while in reality, they were quite skinny. After a while, Rose told me she needed to use the restroom, so she left for a moment. I watched the petite figure leave. Rose always moved slowly and deliberately like that. Just seconds later, Rose had vanished. Clearly, she had still been quite a distance from the door just moments ago. Rose's speed could not have been that fast. I looked around in confusion, not seeing her. I blinked, and Rose reappeared, moving toward the door again. I must be imagining things. I thought it might be due to my frequent use of electronic devices, coupled with the hot weather today. I continued with my lunch. By chance, I noticed Rose's food container. I knew I shouldn't, but was curious about the ingredients in her salad. When I opened the lid of her container, I was shocked to see the content inside. The vegetables and fruits were badly spoiled, leaking and emitting a foul smell, even with maggots crawling all over. I almost vomited. How could Rose eat this disgusting thing? I sat there, bewildered, with a dozen questions swirling in my mind. Suddenly, Rose approached. She was very close. A few seconds before, I hadn't seen her here, had I? I hurriedly closed the lid of her food container. Rose smiled at me, a smile that made my heart flutter. My lunch that day ended. I couldn't concentrate on the stories Rose was telling. I observed whether Rose was actually eating that terrible thing in the container, but she wasn't eating. However, when we cleaned up afterward, that salad container was completely empty. Only a little dressing was left, as if it had been eaten entirely. What was happening? Could it be that I was seeing things? That day there were many tasks to handle, so I temporarily forgot about what happened at lunchtime. That night, I stayed late at the office, and I didn't know when Rose had gone home. She didn't say anything to me. She hadn't acted like that before. I left the office at 10 p.m., feeling sluggish as I walked down to the parking lot, and I began driving home. Just as my car rolled out, Rose suddenly jumped out from somewhere to block my car. I was startled and slammed on the brakes as Rose looked at me with a big smile. She walked up to the driver's window and asked if I would give her a ride home. I was both happy and surprised to see Rose here. I stood there, hesitant for a moment before rushing to agree. I stepped out and politely opened the passenger door for Rose, but she had already sat in the back seat. She said she felt more comfortable sitting there. I looked at her in confusion, while Rose kept that beautiful smile on her face. Rose gave me directions to her house. She hadn't shared much about her personal life before. The road to Rose's house was quite dark, and I learned this was also a place where robberies and a few assaults frequently occurred. I asked Rose why she hadn't gone home, but stayed late at work instead, and I hadn't seen her in the office. Rose didn't answer, but smiled and changed the topic. Suddenly, a man ran out into the lane and fell right in front of my car. Luckily, I reacted in time, quickly running over to check on him, realizing he was drunk. I helped the man up. He was so inebriated that he couldn't stand straight, but unexpectedly, he reacted violently, panic on his face, and he ran away screaming. Rose and I looked at each other, puzzled, not understanding what was happening. Continuing on the way to Rose's house, after a while, we encountered a girl. She appeared rebellious with her short and tight clothing. She waved my car down and spoke in a flirtatious tone, indicating that she wanted a ride. I felt confused and didn't know how to respond. The girl accidentally glanced back at my car and suddenly switched to a look of horror before running away. I turned back to look at Rose, and she was also staring at me, both of us bewildered by the odd behavior of the people here. Continuing to follow Rose's directions, we passed through a residential area and came to a deserted road. I felt uneasy and stopped the car, glancing at the clock which displayed nearly midnight. I was quite tired and anxious, and I turned back to ask Rose for a specific address. She told me I would reach it by going further down this road, and Rose smiled, seeming to still be full of energy after a long day. Suddenly, a force pressed down on my leg, causing me to slam on the gas pedal. I couldn't control my leg, and from behind, an arm wrapped around my neck. I panicked and screamed as that eerie laughter echoed in my ear. I crashed head-on into a large rock, and everything before my eyes turned red and vanished in the darkness. I groggily woke up. My whole body ached, and I couldn't move. I realized I was in a hospital. I heard a doctor asking me questions, but I couldn't understand what was happening, nor could I speak. I shut my eyes and fell into a void. The surrounding space was pitch black. I woke up, panicking as I couldn't determine my position or direction. From a distance, two graves appeared along with the figure of someone. I rushed toward them, crying out for help with the last bit of strength I had. I slowly recognized that figure was Rose. She looked at me, still wearing that very bright smile. I glanced at the two tombstones. One was mine, and the other was Dante's. According to the engraving, Dante had died 2 months ago, while my gravestone had a question mark engraved on it. I looked at Rose. She was still smiling. But why did that beautiful smile seem so haunting and horrifying? That evening, I remember lying down, reading the new comic book I had just bought after school earlier. The story was about a giant monster that came to Earth in search of a new food source, that is humans. The more I read, the more I got drawn into the captivating storyline.
completely forgetting about my bedtime.
Hey,
I jolted, startled by a deep, resonant voice unlike any I had ever heard before from anyone. I froze for a few seconds, unsure if I could trust my hearing.
hey, kid.
The voice echoed again. I jumped up, grabbing the blanket to shield myself, curling up as I scanned the room. It was clear that I'm the only one here.
Don't scream. I'm down here, under your bed.
I leapt up, pulling the blanket tightly around my trembling body. I have to escape and call for help from Mom and Dad, but no, the monster will grab my ankle and devour. Internal struggle took me a few brief seconds and couldn't come up with a solution for myself.
Don't be scared. I just want to talk for a bit. What's your name, kid?
Maria, I answered obediently, fearing I would provoke the monster.
Are you not going to ask for my name, kid?
The monster said in a rather humorous tone. What's your name? I asked, feeling a little more at ease.
Sully.
Really? Are you Sully? I asked, pulling the blanket down. I knew Sully was blue with very soft fur.
It's me.
Sully slightly smiles. I laughed along with him, eager to look under the bed to confirm the image in my mind. But I was still afraid and felt suspicious. At least I knew I would be temporarily safe and have time to find a way to escape.
What is your dream, kid?
Sully asked me gently. An artist. I really love things that are colorful. What about you, Sully? I asked back.
I have a dream of becoming a dentist. What do you think about a monster being a dentist?
Sully chuckled in a deep voice. I also laughed out loud, and then I gathered all my courage to ask the question that had been weighing on my mind all along. Are you going to scare or eat me?
No, I am here to scare the person hiding in your wardrobe.
I was startled and immediately turned my gaze toward the wardrobe. The rustling sound echoed, and once again, I pulled the blanket tightly over myself, feeling terrified and panicked. Sully, I'm so scared. Please help me. I pleaded with a monster. The room's lights suddenly went out, and the wardrobe door swung open. I knew this because I could hear it. A few seconds later, the blanket was yanked off my body with a strong force. I screamed loudly, but before I could grasp my surroundings, everything fell silent again, and my heart raced so fast that my chest felt tight. Slowly opening my eyes, I was gasping for breath. A sharp knife was on the bed, right next to my foot. The window was shattered, and the cold December wind swept into the room, making my body feel even more stiff. The door swung open, and my parents' frantic voices called my name. My mother rushed over and hugged me tightly, while my father quickly called the police. The police found a smaller knife, some tranquilizers, a cloth bag, and even a taser in my wardrobe. My parents couldn't remain calm upon seeing those things. As for me, I couldn't think of anything else except for Sully. 3 hours after my dad's call, another police unit managed to apprehend the intruder. His name is Jeffrey Buonarroti, 36 years old, his body covered in fresh cuts that were still bleeding. So I was saved by a monster? This is unbelievable. I didn't get to see Sully, but I heard him. Sully came to warn and protect me. It's hard to believe. After the incident, my parents replaced all the locks and installed security lights around the house to ensure our safety. I never heard Sully again, but I will never forget that deep voice. I've never looked under the bed even once, partly because I was more scared than curious, but I hope he is still there. 2 days ago, I finished reading my book. At the end of the story, the monster chooses to stay on Earth and live peacefully with humans, to do many good deeds to atone for the mistakes and losses caused. People loved and gave the monster a beloved name, Sully. Not all monsters that come to you are there to scare you or eat you. My name is Gray, 33 years old. I live alone in a small house at the edge of town, right next to the forest. 10 years ago, my life changed. I lost my job, my love, and my close friends. After some time in therapy at the hospital, I moved to this house to live and work online. I don't have any friends. It's been like that for the past 10 years, and I haven't made any new ones. I also hardly ever leave the house unless I really need to. But I still keep up with everything and stay connected through social media. Besides Facebook and Instagram, which are pretty mainstream, I also use TikTok. One evening, as usual, I was lying in my room on my phone before heading to bed. 5 more minutes and then 10 more minutes. I got so caught up in scrolling through my phone that I lost track of time and couldn't sleep. At midnight, I accidentally stumbled upon a live video on TikTok. From the very first moments, the video had a weirdly captivating drawl. It looked like a man walking through the forest at midnight. There was no talking, no visible face, and no title for the live video. No one knew what he was doing or what his purpose was. The dark, eerie atmosphere of the forest at night and the slow footsteps made me admit that he really knew how to pique viewers' curiosity. Nearly 2,000 viewers were watching, and their constant comments showed they were all interested and curious. I was hooked too, and ended up watching the live video for 15 minutes. The guy still didn't say a word, and his footsteps were getting more and more frantic. Wait, I started paying attention to the space around him. This place looks familiar. Suddenly, the guy stopped and held his phone straight ahead. This is my house. I immediately jumped up and gasped. That's exactly the back of my house. He was still holding the phone, not moving for 10 minutes. I realized I was being followed live on video, and I was following that person through the stream. Oh my God, what was going on? I closed the TikTok app and called the police. There was no telling what that creep might do next. I hung up and went back to check, but the live stream had already ended. About 10 minutes later, the police arrived. I had no evidence since I forgot to take a screenshot. The police thoroughly checked around the house, but there were no signs of trespassing. They didn't find anyone at the forest edge, or even 3 kilometers deep into the forest. I didn't know how to explain things to the police, and even after they left, I couldn't shake the anxiety. At 2 a.m., I checked the locks on all the doors in the house 3 times. I had experienced ups and downs, so I had to be cautious. I'd always prepared for any bad things to come, but I was still definitely scared. I was all alone in the house, and I couldn't help but wonder if that mysterious guy might be a killer. In the following days, I didn't leave the house and made sure I had enough food for a week. Everything was normal, but I kept an eye on that strange account's activities. I'm going to record the screen and use it as evidence for the police. Living in this confusion and anxiety is really uncomfortable. It had been 5 days since that night, and the account still hadn't been active. By the 7th day, I was starting to feel more at ease. It was probably just a prank by some teenager. That night, at midnight, I was working on the report for the new project. The notification from my phone made me feel curious, worried, and confused all at once. The strange account was streaming live. The content was the same as before, footsteps moving through the forest. This time, the number of viewers was almost double what it was before. While everyone else seemed excited, I recorded the phone screen and carefully watched the surrounding area. Once again, he was behind my house, and he was getting closer and closer. I started hearing the footsteps clearly both on the phone and behind the house. I quickly grabbed a defensive item, went down to the living room to call the police on the landline, and kept my eyes on him. I described the situation in detail and mentioned that I had video footage as evidence. The police told me to stay calm and remain in the house until they arrived. Right after I hung up, the account ended its live stream. Afraid I'd lose track of him again, I rushed outside. Pushing open the side door, I grabbed my golf club, ready to confront him. But no one was there. Suddenly, gunshots rang out, one after another, followed by the sound of glass shattering. I dropped to the ground, holding my head in my hands, then stumbled back into the house. 3 more loud gunshots echoed, and then the night fell silent. I sat under the kitchen table, my body trembling uncontrollably. "Mr. Gray, are you okay? Mr. Gray, please speak up." I heard the policeman's voice, and I crawled out from under the table, but I still couldn't say a word. The police's flashlights shone directly in my face. "Here you are. What happened?" All the lights in the house were on, and the policeman guided me to the main door. The scene looked like a disaster had happened, but thankfully, I was still safe. The window glass was shattered, and the door had bullet holes in it. The security camera had been shot and was lying on the ground. All I could give the police was the video recording from my phone. The police asked me to grab some essential personal belongings and move to temporary accommodation for the night. 3 days later, the police came to see me and showed me photos of the scene. One photo in particular stood out. It showed the name Hal engraved on the door, though it was very small. For a few moments, it felt like I'd been hit with an electric shock, leaving me completely frozen. Hal, my best friend, was also the one who took everything from me 10 years ago. Does it mean he's been released? What else could he possibly want from me? I'm not going to let anything threaten or mess up my life again. I moved to a city hundreds of miles away, not knowing what kind of trouble might be waiting for me.
I'm Selena, 24 years old. I'm a paralegal and live in Texas. My boyfriend Victor and I have been together for almost 2 years now. Victor's 4 years older than me and super into photography. My room's full of artsy portraits Victor's taken. He never leaves the house without his camera. Wherever he goes, he's always pulling out his camera and snapping amazing shots. Victor's picky about it. He likes to handle the whole process of taking and developing photos himself. Lately, Victor's been picking up a bunch of jobs, so his schedule's been crazy busy. After all that craziness, we finally got to spend some time together. Victor was wiped out and told me his neck's been pretty sore lately. I figured it was from work and told Victor to take it easy for a few days. He stopped taking on jobs and just stayed home to develop photos and send them back to the customers. Everything was fine until one day. Victor developed the photos he took for the high school group at the graduation. That's also the school Victor went to when he was younger. But weirdly, all the photos came out messed up with light streaks in one part. Victor had never dealt with this before. He checked the photos on the camera again, and they were fine. When he developed the photos again, the light streaks were gone. We figured it was a problem with the photo development process. But when I looked closely at the photos, I got goosebumps because I saw a woman's shadow showing up everywhere. I couldn't see her face clearly, just a pale face, dark eye sockets, and long hair. I quickly showed the photos to Victor. He was freaked out for a while. A creepy vibe took over, and we didn't say anything after that. We'd heard a lot of stories about creepy photos before, but I never thought that one day he'd end up taking pictures of them himself, and so many at that. The rest of the day, Victor didn't say a word to me. He was quiet, looked tired, and seemed like he was lost in thought. The next morning, We went to a photo repair shop in the city, hoping they could fix the photos. Victor showed him the photos with a flash in one corner, but the shop owner said they couldn't fix them because they were too damaged. We looked at each other. Then he showed the photos with the girl's shadow in them. Anyway, she showed up in just a small corner, so there was a better chance of fixing it. The shop owner gave us a hard look. He took the photos, turned away, and said at the same time, "Ghosts are always around us. It could be friends, family, demons, or people who really hate us. And they never just go away." I shivered in fear when I heard that. Looking at Victor, his face seemed worried and confused. The owner told us to come back in a few days to pick up the photos. On the way back, Victor was deep in thought, and the mood was pretty down. I suggested we go to the park instead of heading home. We held hands, walked, and talked. I told Victor I wanted to take some pictures, and he was happy to go along with it. I stood there posing, and as soon as I lifted the camera, Victor's whole attitude switched to panic. He put the camera down and looked at me, clearly freaked out. I was confused and had no idea what was going on. Victor freaked out, looked around, then picked up the camera again to check it out, but didn't take a picture. I ran back, and before I could say anything, Victor grabbed me and pulled me to the car to leave. In the evening, I cooked and opened up to him. Victor must have been worn out from work, and on top of that, those creepy photos were probably messing with his head. That night, Victor went to bed really early. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs to get some water. As soon as I left, I heard water running in the room across the hall. That was the room Victor used to develop the photos. I walked over, opened the door, and honestly, I got a little scared when I saw the photos Victor developed that afternoon. I slowly walked over to the sink where Victor kept his photo developing solution and saw bubbles rising. From under the water, a head of black hair slowly started to rise. I was frozen. I couldn't even breathe. The hair was pretty long, and it looked like it belonged to a woman. Then, 2 hands shot up really fast, grabbing the edge of the sink tightly. I jumped back, tripped, and ended up falling to my knees. Just as the head was about to fully emerge, I jumped up and realized it was all just a dream. I turned around and didn't see Victor. He was sitting by the window, staring out, looking really lost in thought. I walked over, didn't mention the weird dream, but gently asked him. Victor was really tired. He said his neck was getting worse and was causing him insomnia. The next morning, Victor and I went to the doctor to check out the pain in his neck. The results came back totally normal, which was pretty surprising. The doctor prescribed some medicine, told Victor to take it regularly, and said to keep an eye on it. On the way back, we stopped by the photo shop to pick up the stack of photos from the day before. The shop owner wrapped the photos up in some paper and handed them to us with a cautious look. He didn't answer any of our questions, just told us to check out the photos ourselves when we got home. When we got home, Victor quickly tore into the stack of photos to check them out. Both of us were shocked because the woman's figure wasn't edited at all. It was even clearer. She had changed her posture, and her face clearly showed the details and a hateful expression. Victor instantly burned all the photos and called the customer to apologize and sent over some compensation. Victor gave up his job and stayed home since the pain was getting worse. His health getting worse, along with not sleeping, put him in a bad mood. I caught him a few times yelling and even telling someone to stay out of his life. But when I peeked through the crack in the door, I was shocked to see he was alone. There were times when Victor would wake up in the middle of the night, stare at me, scream in fear, and tell me to go away. I rearranged my work and planned a trip so Victor could relax and hopefully ease his neck pain. We picked a place close to the city and drove there in our own car.
The road was full of fresh, bright scenery. I played some soft music, and we both felt really relaxed. Those happy moments didn't last long. A few minutes later, Victor suddenly screamed in panic, gripped the steering wheel tight, and then slammed on the brakes. He kept panting, and it really confused me. Then Victor quickly jumped out of the car, looking frantic as he checked the front. I quickly unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car, asking him what was going on. Victor said he had just hit a girl really strong and he needed to rush her to the emergency room. I hugged Victor, looked him in the eyes, and told him there was no girl. Everything was fine. Victor stared at me for a while, then calmed down and kept apologizing for his mood swings these past few days. I suggested we head back and get Victor to see a psychologist, but he firmly insisted that everything was fine and wanted to keep going with the trip. I saw how determined Victor was, so I agreed. But the trip just wasn't fun anymore. Victor's face was really tense as he drove, and I kept staring at him worried. The traffic light ahead turned red, right at the crosswalk. There was a schoolgirl walking across. I didn't see any signs of Victor slowing down, so I turned to remind him. Victor gripped the steering wheel, his eyes bloodshot, his face and neck swollen, shouting loudly as he slammed his foot on the gas pedal. "I told you to stay out of my life!" And then the awful thing happened. Our car sped up and slammed into the schoolgirl. The car lost control and then crashed into an electric pole on the side of the road. There was red on the windshield, along with the twisted body of that poor girl. I only had time to see that horrifying sight, felt a sharp pain in my head, and then passed out. I'm not sure how long it was, but I was lucky to wake up and recover pretty quickly. Victor wasn't as lucky. He temporarily lost control of his limbs. My family pushed me in a wheelchair to visit Victor. He didn't look at me, just kept crying and saying sorry. Victor said he knew why all the weird stuff that had been happening lately was going on. In high school, Victor had a girlfriend named Bethany. Victor got really into photography back then, and he and his girlfriend would often take souvenir photos at school. One day, Victor found out that Bethany was being bullied by two of his close friends in the lab. Instead of protecting his girlfriend and standing up to his two friends, Victor just stood there laughing and taking photos. Bethany felt completely hopeless and ended her life when she turned 18. Haunted and exhausted, Victor lost consciousness, thinking the schoolgirl walking by was Bethany. Victor was feeling really regretful, thinking he was paying for his past mistakes. Victor said goodbye, not wanting my life to be affected. I cried a lot. I loved Victor so much, but just couldn't face him. A few months later, while I was cleaning up at Victor's place, I accidentally found a photo he'd taken of himself. The spirit of a high school girl with a resentful look was sitting on Victor's shoulder. It had to be Bethany.
My girlfriend has passed away, but she still frequently messages me. Colleen, my girlfriend, had an accident when her car collided with two other vehicles and passed away just minutes later. We've been together for 5 years. I had plans to propose to her just 3 months into our relationship. Colleen, on the other hand, did not have a relaxed view on the topic of marriage. I loved her more than anything, so I went along with Colleen's decision. But I still held on to the hope of changing her mind. Now that's no longer possible. The day I received the tragic news, I felt as if a part of my soul had left with Colleen. I cried, feeling overwhelmed and devastated, constantly missing her. Every day without fail, I would send a good morning message to the one I loved. "Good morning, my love. Wishing you a wonderful day. Have a cheerful morning. I love you." No matter what happened, I would always text Colleen first to share it. The project I told you about has succeeded beyond my expectations. I wish you could witness it, Colleen. I have Colleen's personal account password and frequently access it. It gives me the feeling that she's still there, that she can read everything I send. It's just that Colleen doesn't reply to me anymore. I also shared Colleen's social media account with her mother, Aunt Emma. I understand the pain Aunt Emma feels when her only child is taken away so suddenly. 13 months after Colleen left, she sent me her first message. Hello. I felt shocked when I read that message, but a few seconds later, a sense of joy and hope washed over me. It was ridiculous, but I briefly thought that Colleen might still be alive. But then I convinced myself it was Aunt Emma. That was the only logical explanation, or so I thought. A few days later, Aunt Emma confirmed that she was not the one who had messaged me from Colleen's account. What if it was one of her friends? I suggested, another theory, which also seemed quite convincing. Colleen knew a lot of people, and it could have been a prank from one of her tech-savvy friends. Hello? Hello? That was the phrase Colleen used to text me the most, until I finally ran out of patience and replied, This is really crazy. How can you enjoy it? Not only that, Colleen's account started tagging me in posts. This was really exhausting for me. It was both Colleen and not her at the same time. I witnessed my girlfriend's body being brought home from the accident, endured the days of mourning, and my heart shattered as her coffin was lowered. But now, she's messaging me. There were times when I was truly convinced it was Colleen, because the words she used matched exactly what we had planned together. And the most horrifying, insane thing happened. I received a photo of myself taken from the window while I was sitting at my computer desk. It was sent from Colleen. I felt a wave of nausea and struggled to breathe. What the hell is happening? I shared this story on Reddit, hoping to find some connection or support because I felt so lost. The story above is based on a true event. A user named Nathan, with the Reddit handle NateSW, shared the story of his girlfriend of 5 years. Nathan's story garnered significant attention, and many people offered various theories to explain the strange events he described. One theory suggested that it might be the girlfriend's mother, who, out of grief and longing for her daughter, sent those messages to Nathan in an attempt to comfort him. Others speculated that Nathan might have been sending the messages to himself, either consciously or unconsciously, as a way to cope with his loss. It's possible that he was so consumed by grief and loss that his actions sometimes lacked clarity. Absolutely, regardless of the theories, it's the ones left behind who bear the deepest pain and longing. Their grief is a heavy burden that doesn't easily fade. Indeed, memories can bring joy, but also evoke difficult-to-forget pain. They are like a part of life, both beautiful and full of challenges. Beautiful memories can kill the soul if we don't find a way to break free and seek out new, joyful experiences. I'm Oscar, and the creepy stuff I went through was like 15 years back. Back then, unlike most guys my age, I was pretty shy and kept to myself. When I was a kid, I didn't hang around or anything. Just stayed home, watched TV, and read stories. When I got older, like in high school, I was still pretty quiet. I didn't cause trouble, but I wasn't killing it in school or great at any subject either. Back then, my buddies were all flexing with their girlfriends, while I was just showing off the skills I leveled up in my game. There wasn't much to say since everyone was into their own stuff. But I was the only one up front, so those group hangouts made me feel totally out of place. I got self-conscious about how I talked, especially if I was talking to a girl. There were a couple of girls in school who'd come up to me, but after like 3 sentences, they'd bounce. I only felt confident in my skills when I was gaming, so I started spending more and more time on it. And then, I met my first crush in the game. Her name was Casey, or at least, that's what I figured from her game tag. Funny enough, both Casey and I lived in New York. After a few times of being on the same team, I noticed Casey, but I wasn't really looking to get to know her. Then, out of nowhere, she hit me up first. Casey's way of talking was pretty hilarious, had me laughing all the time. I figured she was around my age, just a guess though. Didn't want to ask anything too personal. We talked a lot about our shared love for gaming, and slowly started chatting about life and feelings too. Talking to Casey made my heart feel tired, because it just wouldn't stop racing. Every day, I couldn't wait for game time, and seeing Casey's name online would have me grinning like an idiot. After we'd been chatting for like 2 weeks, Casey just suddenly dropped that she liked me, and I sat there staring at her messages for like 10 minutes, totally shocked. So, I had a girlfriend and was all proud, showing her off to my friends. They were doubting it and told me to bring Casey to the next hangout. Before I could even bring it up to Casey, she was the one who suggested we meet. Casey's always like that. Her being so upfront and taking the lead totally surprised and made me happy. Casey wanted to hang at my place, just the two of us, and only in the evening when no one else was around. I said yes to Casey, but I was low-key stressing about how to tell my parents and brother. But fate really hooked me up and made it easy to meet my first love. My parents said they were going to a party at a friend's place, and my brother and his crew were heading out for the night. I was hyped and texted Casey, and we set a time to meet up. To be all suave, I offered to pick Casey up, but she turned me down and told me to just wait at home for a surprise. I sent Casey my address and got everything ready for our first date. I cleaned up my room, threw on a nice suit, and secretly used my brother's hair wax and cologne. My phone buzzed with a message, and I grabbed it quick to check out Casey's profile pic. "I'm outside your house." My heart started racing. My hands and feet were sweating, and I was so freaked out I totally forgot to open the door. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and no one was there. I stood there for a minute, ran to the gate to check around, then ran back inside to grab my phone and text Casey again. She said she messed up the address and would be over in a sec. I ran to the bathroom, fixed myself up, then plopped down in the living room to wait. I couldn't sit still, kept wringing my shirt, and then the door knocked again. This time, I rushed over like crazy and threw open the door. What I saw made me freeze. A fat guy with messy clothes and hair was just standing there grinning at me. "You need help?" I said, all confused. "Hey, Oscar, it's Casey." The guy grinned big, eyes wide open. I froze when he said his name, Casey. Before I could even react, he stepped up, shoved his arm against the door, and wouldn't let me close it. I ran inside, grabbed my phone, bolted to my room, locked the door, and shaking, dialed the cops. He was outside, knocking on the door like non-stop, calling my name real soft. Didn't yell or anything. Each knock made my whole body freeze up, and I covered my ears in both hands till it hurt. The fear had me, a 14-year-old, crying like a little kid, even though I was in my own house. The cops showed up, and the guy was gone, along with some small stuff from the living room. My parents and brother came back soon after, and they totally freaked out when they saw the house and how out of it I looked. After more than 3 days of looking, the cops finally caught Casey, but I couldn't bring myself to face him. I didn't even dare to tell anyone how stupid I was for giving a stranger my address and personal info. It was so embarrassing, thinking I had feelings for a freak for almost a month. Definitely a lesson in being careful that I'll never forget.